What is going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and welcome back to Inside the Soul episode 3. In this series on YouTube, I talk to founders of shoe companies, designers, to basically get the lowdown on different types of shoes. Today we're going to be talking Tolos. I'm joined here with my friend Evan Ritt. He is the founder of Tolos, but enough of my talking. Evan, nice to have you on, man. Could you do a quick intro? Could you explain a little bit about Tolos and the brand? Give us a Cliff Notes.
I can. Thank you, Jake. I'm new to the scene here, so this is fun doing these kind of interviews. So, my name is Evan Ritt. I'm the founder of Tolos. I live in Denver, Colorado. That's how Jake and I got in contact, really. And I used to play hockey. I played at the University of Denver. I won a national championship in 2017, and I played a couple years of pro in Europe after. And I came to Barefoot shoes in my training. My trainer in 2013 got us a pair of New Balance Minimus, and that was my first pair, and I used it for training primarily. And then I progressively got more into health and wellness and was really self-taught with a lot of things and kept circling back to footwear and just felt like I couldn't find a barefoot shoe for myself. Being an athlete that wanted one that was performance oriented but also looked good, was high quality, and at a reasonable price point. And so I just sat in the market for years hoping that I could that one of these companies would either move in the direction of what I was looking for. And in the back of my head, I always wanted to sort of take the challenge on myself, and then I just decided that it was time to go for it a couple years ago. And so we're about a week away from launch, so really excited now.
It's exciting, man, and it's cool too, because when I first met Evan, I thought what was really interesting is his background's not in footwear, it's not in building a shoe, and that whole process, it overwhelms me. It makes me feel very exhausted even thinking about the process of building a shoe. So I'm curious, without having that experience going into building the first Archetype 1 Tolos shoe, how has that been? Has it been easy? Has it been tough? What have been things that have surprised you along the way?
So it's interesting. It has been a lot of work, and it's been tough, but I got a lot of lucky breaks with meeting people that were really helpful. And I've just been so determined to do this that it's honestly been a lot of fun work doing it. And crafting a shoe really for myself, and so that was my main focus this whole time, was crafting a shoe for myself, for an athlete that wants to look good, wear it with athleisure. So the work has been hard, and I am underqualified in some ways, but I think honestly, if I knew what I was getting myself into, I might not have even started. So yeah. And now I have everything in place. I have the factory, I have the connections, I have what I need to do, and so hopefully now I can just keep iterating and make a better shoe, and that's ideally, and that's coming from an athlete's perspective. I'm trying to keep building and come at it, even though I don't maybe have the experience that other people have. I'm trying to use that to my advantage, and let people come to me and be like, hey, I really want this in a shoe. I would love to see this.
Totally.
And use that feedback and that inexperience to my advantage, really.
I like that. And I feel like when you listen to some entrepreneurs discuss how they built their businesses, a lot of their talk is about a similar mindset where it's yeah, I wanted something, so I built it, and I think had I actually known what I was getting myself into, I probably wouldn't have done it. So I think that's really cool, because it kind of sounds like you're approaching this first model without a ton of biases in some ways. Yeah, you know what you want, but you're also not totally opposed to getting feedback. I've given you a good amount of feedback on the Archetype 1, and it's been really cool seeing how your wheels are spinning now, and you're I think I'm going to do this, I think I'm going to change this. Yeah. And so with the Archetype 1, man, let's talk about some of the key features that you love with this model, and then maybe let's talk about some of the features that you are going to update that you can kind of share here first, because a lot of this isn't public knowledge.
Perfect. Should we talk about what a barefoot shoe is? I feel like your audience already knows that.
For the most part, our audience already knows that.
Yeah.
Barefoot shoe is essentially a shoe designed to replicate what it's like to be barefoot, wider toe box, wider midfoot construction, minimal stack height, a ton of articulation, so you get a lot of ground feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much?
Yeah, exactly. Beautifully said. Sounds like you've done that before. So one of the things that I really wanted to do is make barefoot shoes more accessible to people. And one thing that limits people with barefoot shoes is the shape of the toe box. And this actually, we haven't actually talked about this off camera, but so many barefoot shoes have an oddly shaped toe box, in my opinion. Either it's pointed, some that we've talked about don't give enough space for the big toe, are too wide, in my opinion, for the general public. And so I tried to find the best shape that I could that doesn't look like a super wide toe box and looks the most natural that I could. So we made a custom last so that we could have this shape, and I'm really proud of it, honestly. I think it's gonna be really good for a lot of people. Obviously, some people need wider shoes. Everybody has different shaped feet, so it's not gonna be perfect for everybody, but it's pretty good. And if you need different, then let me know. So I'm proud of the wide toe box in its shape, especially compared to some other companies. I'm pretty proud of the look in general.
Yeah.
And some of the main inspirations were like an Adidas Ultra Boost. That was one of the biggest style-wise. Also, the Tech Loom Tracer from APL, which was interesting that you found that immediately, that you saw that. Because I feel like not a ton of people know about that shoe. And then the third and almost the most influential shoe is the S-Lab Ultra by Salomon. Do you know that shoe by chance?
I've seen it. I've never been able to try it though.
Yeah, so it's a very technical trail running shoe, but it has a very similar construction. So this is a much more casual version of that, with elements of the Ultra Boost and elements of the Tech Loom Tracer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was something that like drew me to Tolos originally, was the actual appearance of the shoe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really find some barefoot shoes super attractive for daily wear, so
And I don't think that
having a shoe that's casual is nice.
And I don't think that it's wrong for you to say that, because, and that's part of what I'm trying to do, is have open conversation about it. It's okay. I have so much respect for all the barefoot shoe companies and what they're trying to do, and it's extremely difficult to design a great looking shoe. And so I'm trying to come at a demographic, and that's another thing, is that I don't think a lot of these companies are necessarily trying to make a shoe for young athletes like us, necessarily. Vivo is for sure, but other ones like Zero is definitely making a shoe for the everyday person, maybe a slightly older demographic, maybe a more like the boulder type, hiking, and that's great, and I have a ton of respect, and so I'm trying to make a more sort of youthful version,
I like
athletic.
it.
Yeah.
And so with the current construction,
Mm-hmm.
you talked about the last construction, you talked about the shape.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you're working to improve on future iterations? Because right now, like, I feel like the Archetype 1 is a really strong first pass for a shoe. But I think that's a big thing for folks to understand, is like with the first pass of a shoe, like, it's going to get better. It's your first run at a very, very premature model for the company. So what are things that you can expect basically over the next like year, so late 2023 into 2024, that will change basically with this model?
Yeah, so thank you for that, honestly. So that's the goal of this shoe, is to basically put a shoe out there that people can say, okay, it's not perfect, but I see where you're going, or I see that there's a lot of potential with this. And so that's why, like, the look isn't going to change a ton, but a lot of the performance features are going to change, because that's what I'm most focused on with this, is having a great performance shoe, and then it also 1B being a good looking shoe, and then 2 being a good price shoe. So some of the features that I want to work on, first, the biggest complaint that's coming so far, originally from myself, I completely agree with this, is that it's a little difficult to get on, just because this material is rigid, and partially that has to do with this stitching that goes around this opening.
Yeah.
And so if we get a stretchier fabric, it doesn't necessarily make it easier to open. So we're working with the factory trying to get a solution to that, to make it so that it holds your foot strong, and can perform well, so that when you're in the gym you can be cutting and moving well, and it holds tight, but it's not super stiff. And honestly, as this breaks in, it's really easy to get on.
Yeah.
And if you just use these pull tabs, it's really not a big issue.
The only time I found them really tough to get on is if I've trained barefoot in them and I put in a ton of sweat and then I take them off and try to put them back on. Yeah. It's a little bit tough, but like any shoe is tough to get on with a freaking sweaty foot, especially if you went barefoot in that shoe and your foot's like just gripping everything.
Totally.
So that's really cool. I like that, man. I like that change, and I think that's going to be a cool iteration to stay on the lookout for.
And I was encouraged talking to you, because that was a thing for me. It's not really a big issue for me, because you just sit down, just pop it on. But I was worried because I just don't want, I want to make these as accessible as possible. So it was nice to hear from you actually that you didn't mind it too much. So that's encouraging. Another change is, being a performance shoe, I want this sole to be extremely performant. I want it to last forever. I don't want it to wear down. I want it to be strong and grippy, but also thin and flexible. So that's one thing that we're really working on. There's testing that we can do with the factory to improve the abrasion. Right now, so this is the second model of this sole, and it's the highest abrasion that we could do in the short period of time before we produce these. And so we're going to try to improve the abrasion more, and then also add a little bit of stickiness. So like when you were slipping doing the pushes, to try to improve that and make the lugs a little bit stronger.
Sick. And then for context, like what he means by that is, in my review, I noticed that on turf with this shoe, I was having a little bit of slip when doing some heavier sled pushes because the lugs just weren't gripping as much. So that's really cool to hear that it's going to add, I think, to the variability of the shoe sole for gripping different surfaces, under different loads, under different contexts. Because that's one thing that I find too with other barefoot shoes that don't have aggressive lug or tread patternings, like you get a lot more slip just because they are so minimalist and they are so limited with how aggressive they are. So it's kind of something to expect in some ways. Yeah. But having a shoe that you don't have to fret on that for, like, I think is freaking sick.
Exactly. And that's what I'm trying to do is like, because the great part about it, I think that it's easiest to compare these in the slippage to like the Vivo soles, like the Primus Lights. Yeah. And that's my favorite barefoot shoe is the Primus Lights. Before I made this, and so I'm just hoping that we can have the thin, the feel that you get in those Vivo shoes. Yeah. All the sensory input that you get from those, but add a little bit of grip to it. Yeah. Add a little bit of attack to it.
Nice. Yeah. And then so sole, boot, and then I know we were talking today actually about reworking the TPU around the toe box.
Exactly. So this is one of my biggest concerns right now is addressing this is what's happening. So I spent a lot of time working on where the break happens and doing my best to curve the bottom part of this eye stay and to so it's like an offset curve. If you get the shoe in your hands, you could see it. And then trying to shape these 2 points of the TPU so that it matched perfectly with the break. And what I think is happening is when they scaled the models for some of the smaller sizes, some of the geometry just doesn't quite line up. And so what's happening is the break is happening about an inch up on the TPU here. And so it's folding right here. And for maybe about 5% of the samplers that I got, we got 40 samples, and 2 of them felt discomfort on their pinky toe because because the TPU was folding and pressing on their pinky toe.
Gotcha.
And so we're going to do our best to help people get through that. One person, Dr. Perez at Gate Happens, we got her a half size bigger, and it still folded there for her, but it wasn't pressing on it, and so
Gotcha.
she loves them. So yeah, that's one thing, we're going to bring that back, and hopefully that addresses it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And so you're hearing it first here that the shoe will get updated and improved, which I think is awesome, especially hearing from the founder. Like, I've talked to some folks who have built products, and I'm not like talking shoes specifically even right now, but it almost is like they're like so in their own way that they can't even acknowledge that things need to be improved. So it's really cool to hear you talking about that and having the foresight already. And so we do have a few YouTube questions because I put up a post asking for questions for Evan. And so we have 4 questions. 3 are all kind of similar in nature, which we'll get to. But one question that kind of stuck out that I thought was really interesting is, of all of the barefoot shoe brands on the market, how do you envision Tolos differentiating? Like, how is it going to be a different brand, a different approach to some of your peers?
Yeah. So awesome question, whoever that was. So I think that what Tolos is going to do is try to make shoes, barefoot shoes, as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. And what I think the barefoot shoe market is missing right now is a shoe that people can wear every day, especially athletes. So that's going to be really my niche, is leaning into athletes, especially like the hockey community, because of the great connections that I have. Making styles that are for a little bit younger crowd. I don't know exactly how to word that. And from the brand side, bringing a more artistic side of it. And that's something we haven't actually talked about either. I'm working with a brand designer right now. We're working on a whole rebrand right now, but my goal is to make this a really, not only the shoe a beautiful thing, but sort of a community and a movement that people can really get behind, because I think that's what people in the barefoot world are missing right now is somebody who is able to truly compete with the big dogs. And this shoe and the brand isn't there yet, but my goal is to make it so the community can rally behind it. There's education, there's art, there's movement.
Yeah.
And it's a whole community.
It's really interesting seeing barefoot shoes grow, because to your point, like, I even feel like Vivo and Zero, who are more established companies, like, I still feel like they're almost in the infancy stage still of barefoot shoes, especially when it comes to like mass population consumption and understanding when to use barefoot shoes, why use barefoot shoes, etc. So it's like they're massive companies for sure, and they're established. But when we look at like the vast population, I feel like there's still such like a lacking of like a shoe that you can wear out in a formal setting, and then to the gym, and then to this place, and then it also has like the education behind it. So I really like that. I think that's really cool.
Totally.
And
in nothing but respect for those brands.
Yeah, 100%.
I love those brands. Yeah, and I know you do too. And it's sort of a rising tide lifts all boats. So
100%.
I'm hoping that I can join them in this and add to another demographic that needs better shoe options. And just to add a little bit to the goal of Tolos and sort of the dream of Tolos, on top of the performance and having a shoe for an athlete and a younger athlete, part of what I'm trying to do is give people a tool, and I know that this may sound a little woo-woo, so if I lose you for a sec, sorry about that. But part of what I'm trying to do is create a tool for people to reconnect with themselves a little bit. And that's sort of the movement behind barefoot shoes, and why people are so fanatical about them is that they've found this solution to a lot of their problems, which is reconnecting with your nature, reconnecting with how you have evolved natural patterns. And right now, to get into that place physically, there's a lot of barriers. The shoes don't look the way that people want, they don't perform the way people want, and they don't they're too expensive. And so I'm trying to lower those barriers as much as possible.
I love it, dude. I love the inclusivity approach.
Yeah.
I think it's a little woo, but also like I totally get it, and I
that's
resonate.
Okay, yeah.
And I resonate with that though, because I do think of barefoot shoes as tools, and the reason I like them is for the variability, especially with the ground feel and the sensory input. So I can get behind that for sure, and like I'll josh on Evan all I want for that.
Exactly.
But I can get behind it. I get it.
Fair enough. Yeah, and that's totally fine. That's gonna be an audience that needs to be spoken to, and so I'm trying to get as many as I can. You know? So, totally feel it. Because I'm at all of these things. So
sick. And so we have another couple of questions here, and so a lot of the questions revolve around international shipping. So we have folks in the community from the Philippines, India, Costa Rica. Those were 3 comments I got, 3 different locations. Is Tolos going to start shipping internationally? And if so, you don't have to give a hard date, because I know things can change, especially with the ebb and flow of building a small business. But what can we potentially look forward to with international shipping?
Yes. So everybody international, we're trying to get to you as fast as possible. So right now it's the beginning of December, and we're working on the launch, which we are hoping will be in 7 to 10 days. The shoes are stuck at the LA port right now, and then it'll take about a week once it's released to ship out here. So we're going to get through the launch, and then hopefully in the new year, in early January, we can have international shipping going. But we really have to look into like all the taxes and the bureaucratic part of that too. So there's a chance that it's extended further.
Gotcha. Because I'm curious, like, because I know nothing about international shipping. When you look into different countries, and I don't know if you might know the answer either, but like, is every country somewhat different with like the customs and like the taxes and how you approach that? Or like, is it all kind of streamlined? Like,
I don't know.
All right, well, there we go.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
That's the perfect small business owner right there. Is like, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out, though.
Exactly, yeah, I don't know.
Sick, dude.
We actually accidentally were accepting some international orders at the beginning. So we have about 20 international orders in the pre-sale. And we're going to honor them. And we just asked them to pay $15 to cover the rest of the international shipping. So we'll see that we're sort of using that as an experiment. So we'll see. Hopefully, hopefully we can get to it soon.
Sick, man. And then before we wrap up our interview and our chat here, man, like, let's go over one highlight of building the shoe thus far for you personally, like in your personal life. Did you ever feel like you'd built a shoe company? And if so, like, what's been the biggest, like, and coolest highlight of the journey thus far?
So the biggest highlight thus far has been really how this is really coming together, because I was playing hockey. I had a ton of injuries, and that was sort of part of the inception story too, is that I was trying to heal my body, and barefoot shoes were a piece of that. And that's another thing we talked about, is that barefoot shoes are not perfect for every situation. And so I think they're great for a lot of times in your life, especially if you're lifting and if you build up to it every day, but don't be running in them, etc. Unless you want to run, unless you built up to it. But yeah, so I was playing hockey, and then I was doing this software sales job, and I started building this, and it was just so freeing to get to this point where I had built the shoe, and then I was able to start getting it out to people like yourself, like reviewers and people in this community who are equally as passionate as I am, and to start to build relationships with people like you and the other people in the barefoot world, to sort of join in on the movement. It's been super cool to see a lot of the reactions to the shoe and to sort of the vision, because you can sort of see the vision like that. I think that's why you attach to it too, because you're an athlete too. So yeah, just starting to build those relationships has been really cool.
That's cool. I'm stoked for the black colorway. I ordered a pair of them. Excited for them to come in because I love black shoes. Yeah. Well, dude, speaking of highlights though, before I have one more question for you. Was there ever a moment when you doubted this? So when you started your journey, were you ever like, it's kind of like your what the fuck moment. Like, were there any moments where you're like, what am I actually doing? Like, am I on the right path?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the whole, like, before starting, I was like, what am I thinking? Like, am I actually going to start a shoe company? Like, am I going to compete with Nike? Am I going to try to, like, how am I going to do this? And then I just have been chipping away, and there's doubts the whole time. You know, it's like, am I going to be able to solve this? Am I going to be able to put the work in to do this? But overall, honestly, I'm a pretty resilient guy, and so I feel like I'm still doing okay. It's like, you know, a soldier, like, coming back from war, he sees the new soldier, and he's like, you don't even know, brother. I feel like I'm still the new soldier right now. So we'll
Fair
get there.
enough. Yeah, I feel like with that, like, just the ebbs and flows too, which is like, some days you're probably a little bit more up, some days are definitely probably a little bit more like questioning. 'Cause that's at least how I am with my business. There are definitely days where I'm even like, why am I still making videos? Like, what am I actually doing? Like, what am I? So, like, I totally get that, man. But it's nice kind of having, like, that almost, like, ignorance is bliss approach, because you just keep trucking.
Exactly, yeah. So, we'll maybe check in a year and see how it's going.
For sure, yeah. We'll have to have you come back once the new updates are on, and we'll have to have Evan featured in some workout vids, because living so close, I mean, that's the perk of Denver. And if you're ever in Denver, hit one of us up, and I'm sure we'll be around. But dude, thank you so much for coming on. It's been really cool chatting the Archetype 1, being able to train together too.
Yeah.
Evan and I work out probably every other week at this point now, and just get in some sessions. Some days I wear cross-training shoes and weightlifting shoes just to tease him a little bit. But overall, man, it's been really sick, and I really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate it, dude. Thanks for all the support,
of course,
reviews,
dude.
all the work you put into it.
Of course. I believe in the product, and I see where you're going with it, and it's like, to your point, man, like, it is not going to be perfect for everybody, but you're, like, talking about iterating, you're talking about improving, and I think that's the coolest thing with companies, because there are a lot of shoe companies that I review and work with that just don't care for feedback. They just don't care at all, and it's like, do you want to improve? Like, you have a lot of data points here that could make this better, so it's been really cool to experience that and kind of have that open conversation with you. And before we wrap this video up, man, where can we find you? Obviously, Tolos is the brand, but on Instagram, etc. Like, how can people find you? Where do they reach out to you at?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram at Tolos. The website is WearTolos, WEAR Tolos.com. And those are pretty much the two best places. Cool. I'm super active on there. Reach out if you have any questions. I'll respond. But yeah, thank you for the support, and thank you for the support.
Sweet. And then also, guys, I do have a code for TF2 for Tolos that'll save you, I believe it's $10. So if you are interested in the model and supporting the brand and the growth of Tolos, check that out. I'm going to link that down below. I also have a written review and video review on this model as well. It has quickly become one of my go-to barefoot shoes, and I'm super stoked to see how they continue to improve this shoe. But until next time, guys, this has been Inside the Sole.